Every culture has monsters, creatures lurking in forests, hiding in swamps, watching from the dark, but some of the most terrifying ones aren't animals at all. They're humanoid, they walk on two legs, and a few of them might have been human once. Today, I'm breaking down every major humanoid cryptid and everything we know about them, starting with the one you don't find. It finds you. Wendigo. Most cryptids are something you stumble across in the woods. The Wendigo is something you become. That distinction matters because it's the only cryptid on this list that isn't an undiscovered species. It's a corrupted human. The name comes from Ojibwe and Cree languages, roughly translating to the evil spirit that devours mankind. In Algonquian oral tradition, predating European contact by centuries, the Wendigo was an emaciated bipedal humanoid driven by insatiable cannibalistic hunger. The rule is simple: eat human flesh, lose yourself entirely. This wasn't just folklore. In 1878, a Cree trapper named Swift Runner killed and cannibalized his entire family near modern-day Alberta. The community attributed it to Wendigo possession, and he was executed at Fort Saskatchewan in 1879. Modern sightings still pop up across Ontario, though the real debate isn't whether people see something, it's whether the Wendigo is a literal creature or a cautionary tale about what starvation does to the human mind. Either way, at least the Wendigo gives you a rule: don't eat people and you're safe. The next cryptid on this list doesn't give you any rules at all. Skinwalker. If the Wendigo is a cautionary tale about what happens when a human breaks, the Skinwalker is what happens when a human chooses to break on purpose. In Navajo tradition, Skinwalkers are witches who deliberately violate sacred spiritual law, performing forbidden rituals to gain the ability to shapeshift. They're not animals. They're not monsters. They're corrupted people walking around in stolen skin, often appearing as wolf or coyote-human hybrids. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people know the word Skinwalker because of Skinwalker Ranch in northern Utah, which blew up after 2005 and turned the whole concept into a paranormal TV franchise. The problem? That version of the story has almost nothing to do with actual Dene teachings. Many Navajo consider even discussing skinwalkers openly to be genuinely dangerous, and the cryptozoology community's enthusiasm for the topic is widely seen as disrespectful and wildly inaccurate. The most famous version of this creature is probably the least faithful to the original legend, but if cultural tension makes the skinwalker complicated, wait until you meet a cryptid that's been hunted by actual government-funded expeditions. Yeti. You already know this one. Big white ape, lives in the Himalayas, shows up on lunchboxes. But here's the thing, you probably don't know it as well as you think. Sherpa and Tibetan oral traditions have documented the Yeti for centuries, long before any Europeans set foot in those mountains. The first Western account came in 1832 when naturalist B.H. Hodgson described a tall, reddish-brown, bipedal creature while traveling through Nepal, standing 7 to 10 feet tall, covered in thick fur, walking upright. That description right there is basically the template every other cryptid on this list borrows from. But the real evidence came in 1951. The Shipton expedition photographed 13-inch footprints in the snow at 19,000 feet elevation. Still the most cited physical evidence to this day. And here's what nobody asks. What was a bear doing at 19? 0 feet? Because that's the official explanation now. A 2019 study analyzed supposed Yeti hair samples and concluded the sightings were most likely misidentifications of two bear species native to the region. Case closed, right? Not exactly. Over 50 documented mountaineer sightings since the 1800s keep the debate alive, and researchers still argue whether Yeti even refers to one creature or is an umbrella term for multiple undiscovered apes. The Yeti might be the most famous name on this list, but it's far from the strangest. Because deep in Central Asia, there's something that looks a lot more human than ape: almas. Most humanoid cryptids sound like campfire stories. The Almas sounds like a classified government incident. For centuries, people across Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and the Caucasus have reported encounters with a wild man standing 5 to 6.5 feet tall, covered in reddish-brown hair, with distinctly human facial features. Not ape-like, human-like. That distinction matters because it separates the Almas from every Yeti-type creature on this list. This thing looks closer to a feral person than an undiscovered primate. But here's where it gets wild. wild. In 1958, historian Boris Porshnev helped organize a Soviet Academy of Sciences expedition into the Pamir Mountains specifically to investigate Almas reports. Then, in 1963, a Soviet pediatrician named Ivan Evlov reportedly observed an entire Almas family group, a male, female, and young one, while traveling through the Mongolian mountains. He later interviewed local children who described seeing the creatures regularly. A trained doctor, direct visual contact, child corroboration. That's one of the most extraordinary claims in all of cryptozoology, and it has never been fully verified. The leading theory? The Almas could represent a surviving Neanderthal population. Russian and Central Asian researchers have historically taken this idea far more seriously than Western scientists. And honestly, when you look at the descriptions, the size, the human features, the remote mountain habitat, it's not as crazy as it sounds. But if Central Asia's wild man is unsettling, wait until you hear what's been stalking the Australian outback. Yowie. If the Aboriginal Australian oral traditions are accurate, the Yowie might be the oldest continuously reported cryptid in human history. We're talking thousands of years of documentation. Thousands. That alone makes it worth paying attention to. The first European accounts go back further than most people realize. In 1789, a British handbill described a wild man supposedly captured near Botany Bay. That's before Australia was even a proper colony. From there, sightings kept trickling in through the 1800s, describing a 7 to 10 foot tall, dark-furred creature walking upright with a powerful build. Then the 1970s hit and sightings exploded. Witnesses across New South Wales and Queensland reported large bipedal creatures in remote bushland, and Australian cryptid researchers began compiling databases of reported encounters that have continued growing ever since. Now here's the thing, no physical evidence has ever been recovered. Zero bones, zero DNA, zero anything. But the geographic argument is genuinely interesting. Australia's remote bushland is so vast and so underexplored that new species are still being discovered there regularly. It doesn't prove anything, but it keeps the door cracked open just enough. But the Yowie walks on two legs. The next cryptid on our list doesn't, at least not always. Michigan Dogman. In 1887, two lumberjacks in Wexford County, Michigan reported something that sounds like a werewolf movie pitch. A bipedal creature with a canine head, standing somewhere between 7 and 10 feet tall, with a human torso and wolf-like digitigrade legs. Creepy, but one old report from a couple of loggers isn't exactly groundbreaking. Here's where the pattern gets interesting. The sightings didn't stop. They kept coming back on an eerily consistent schedule every decade, specifically on years ending in 1897, 1907, 1917, all the way through the 20th century. Then in 1987, exactly 100 years after the original sighting, a local DJ named Steve Cook released a song called The Legend about the creature, and it spread like wildfire across the state. After that song dropped, Cook received over 100 reports from people claiming their own dogman encounters. So you've got this cycle. Every 10 years, on the 7th sighting spike, either something with a wolf head is operating on a genuinely eerie schedule, or you're looking at the clearest case study in cryptid history of how anniversaries and media coverage manufacture sighting waves. Every spike correlates suspiciously well with renewed public attention rather than random encounters. Both explanations are unsettling for completely different reasons, but at least the dogman is tall. The next cryptid on our list barely reaches your waist, and that somehow makes it more credible. Orang Pendek. Every other cryptid on this list asks you to believe in something massive hiding in plain sight. The Orang Pendek asks you to believe in something small, and that changes everything. Reported across Sumatran rainforest for centuries, this creature stands just 2.5 to 4.5 feet tall, covered in dark gray or black hair, walking upright like a human. The first Western account came in 1923 from a Dutch colonist named Van Heerwaarden, who spotted the creature while surveying land, but local communities had been documenting it long before any outsider showed up. Here's where it gets interesting. Footprint casts from the region measure only 6.5 to 8 inches, perfectly consistent with the small stature reports. This isn't a 10-foot giant somehow avoiding every camera on Earth. It's a small forest-dwelling ape in one of the most biodiverse and least explored rainforests on the planet. And this is the part that separates the Orang Pendek from literally everything else on this list. 3 new primate species have been discovered in Sumatra since 2003. Primatologist Debbie Martyr first traveled to Sumatra in 1989 and began a serious field investigation in the early 1990s, collecting over 15 witness testimonies. This creature has received genuine primatological archaeological attention, not just YouTube speculation. No bones, no DNA, no captured specimen. But the ecological argument here is real. A small undiscovered ape in an active discovery zone is not the same ask as a giant bipedal monster in suburban Ohio. But if you think science-friendly means boring, wait until you hear about China's answer to Bigfoot, Yeren. Most cryptids get laughed out of government buildings. The Yeren got a formal invitation in. In 1977, the Chinese Academy of Sciences launched an official expedition to investigate this creature, led by paleontologist Zhou Guoxing. That makes it the only cryptid on Earth with explicit state-level research endorsement. Not Bigfoot, not the Yeti, the Yeren. The creature itself has been documented in Chinese folklore from the Hubei mountain region for centuries. Described as 7 to 9 feet tall, covered in reddish-brown hair, walking with a distinctly human-like gait. But the modern investigation is where things get interesting. Between 1977 and 1982, the Chinese Academy of Sciences conducted systematic expeditions across the Shenangjia region, collecting hair samples, footprint casts, and eyewitness accounts. Roughly 400 people have claimed to have seen the creature. A 1976 encounter near Shenangjia Forest involved multiple witnesses and footprint casts measuring up to 13 inches long. 400 witnesses. State-funded research teams, multiple expeditions, and the result? 0 physical specimens, 0 DNA, 0 skeletal material, nothing. Some researchers have questioned whether the communist-era documentation reflects genuine evidence or a state propaganda initiative designed to demonstrate scientific ambition. Either way, it's a fascinating paradox. The most institutionally supported cryptid investigation in history produced the same amount of proof as a guy with a blurry camera in the woods. But if you think a government-backed mystery is strange, wait until you hear about a creature that kicked off the fastest mass panic in cryptid history, Flatwoods Monster. On September 12, 1952, 7 witnesses in Flatwoods, West Virginia reported a 10 to 12 foot creature with metallic gray skin, a geometric spade-shaped head, glowing red eyes, and a smell like sulfur. Creepy, sure, but here's the fascinating part. That single sighting didn't stay single for long. A handful of additional reports popped up across the area in the days that followed, and the story spread like wildfire through local and national media. It's a textbook case of social contagion in action. Now, the U.S. Air Force and skeptical investigators concluded the original sighting was likely a barn owl perched on a tree branch, misidentified in darkness and panic. And honestly, that's a reasonable explanation. Barn owls are genuinely terrifying at night, but here's where it gets weird. Every witness consistently described metallic skin and a perfectly geometric spade-shaped head. That's a very specific hallucination to share if you're just looking at a bird. Owls are unsettling, sure, but nobody has ever mistaken one for a 10-foot metal robot. The real story here isn't what the witnesses saw. It's what happened after. One sighting became a media frenzy in days. Fear is literally contagious, and Flatwoods is the proof. But if you think a panic spreading across West Virginia is strange, wait until you hear about the thing police officers kept spotting near a river in Ohio. Loveland Frog Man. Every other cryptid on this list is basically some variation of big, hairy ape thing in the woods. The Loveland Frogman threw that entire playbook out the window. In May of 1955, an unnamed businessman was driving near Loveland, Ohio, when he reported seeing 3 to 4 foot tall bipedal creatures near the road, hairless, gray-green skin, webbed hands and feet, walking upright like people. Except they weren't people. They were, by all descriptions, giant frogs. Weird enough on its own. But then on March 3rd, 1972, police officer Ray Shockey reported seeing the exact same type of creature near the Little Miami River. Same town, same description, a cop. And then, just 2 weeks later, another officer named Mark Matthews reported a similar encounter along the same stretch of road. 2 police officers within weeks of each other, both corroborating a sighting first reported by a civilian 17 years earlier, all within a tight geographic corridor along the same waterway. That's either extraordinary consistency or extraordinary coincidence. Here's what makes this one genuinely interesting beyond the absurdity. The Frogman is the only cryptid on this entire list described as amphibious. Every other entry implies some kind of undiscovered primate or terrestrial predator. This thing implies a completely different evolutionary pathway. An amphibious humanoid is a fundamentally different claim than a big ape nobody's found yet. Now, the most most likely explanation is still misidentification of a large known reptile or amphibian, but 2 police officers independently reporting an upright frog-like creature is at least a harder account to wave away than your average campfire story. But if you think a bipedal frog is strange, wait until we get to the one cryptid so famous it barely needs an introduction: Bigfoot. You already know this one. Everyone does. That's exactly the problem, because familiarity has made people forget how genuinely strange the Bigfoot situation actually is. The earliest documented Western account dates back to 1811 in Alberta, Canada. The modern sighting explosion kicked off in 1958 near Humboldt County, California, and since then, over 10,000 reports have been logged across the Pacific Northwest. Descriptions are remarkably consistent: 7 to 10 feet tall, bipedal, covered in dark brown or black hair, with footprint casts exceeding 16 inches across completely independent incidents. But here's the thing nobody sits with long enough. The Patterson-Gimlin film, 55 seconds of 16mm footage shot October 20th, 1967 at Bluff Creek, California, is the most analyzed piece of cryptid footage in history, and after 56 years, there's still zero definitive consensus on what it shows. Not most experts agree, not it's been debunked. Zero consensus. That's genuinely remarkable for a piece of film that's been picked apart frame by frame for over half a century, and yet zero skeletal remains, zero confirmed DNA, zero bodies. In a region where millions of people hike, camp, and hunt every single year, something that size should have left physical evidence by now. That's the sharpest problem Bigfoot faces, and no amount of eyewitness testimony solves it. Bigfoot exists in a space no other cryptid occupies, simultaneously taken seriously by thousands of dedicated researchers and treated as a complete cultural punchline. It's permanently unresolved, and honestly, it might stay that way forever. But if Bigfoot's legacy is ambiguity, the next cryptid's legacy is something far darker: disaster. Mothman. On November 15, 1966, 2 couples were driving near Point Pleasant, West Virginia, when they saw something that would change the town forever. A creature standing 6 to 7 feet tall with large gray wings and glowing red eyes, watching them from the darkness. Within 30 days, there were over 100 reports in the Point Pleasant area alone, not scattered across years. 1 month, 1 town, over 100 people describing the same thing. But here's where Mothman separates itself from everything else on this list. 13 months after the sightings began, the Silver Bridge collapsed on December 15, 1967, killing 46 people. And multiple witnesses came forward claiming Mothman's presence had been a warning. That makes it the only humanoid cryptid with a body count attached to it, even if only by proximity. Since 1966, over 2,000 sightings have been documented across North America, with concentrated waves in West Virginia, Chicago, and Point Pleasant itself. John Keel's 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies, documented the original investigation and cemented the creature's reputation as a disaster harbinger rather than just an undiscovered animal. That's a completely different category from everything else we've covered. Now, the leading scientific explanation is surprisingly strong. Sandhill cranes can span 7 feet with wings extended and have red facial markings around their eyes. A large crane spotted at night in headlights could absolutely look like a glowing-eyed winged humanoid. It's one of the most reasonable debunks in all of cryptozoology. But reasonable or not, nobody in Point Pleasant is buying it. And if Mothman feels unsettling because of its scale, wait until you hear about a creature so bizarre it only showed up for 2 nights and then vanished completely. Dover Demon. This one is genuinely strange, and I don't say that lightly. April 21st, 1977, Dover, Massachusetts. A high school student named Bill Bartlett is driving down Farm Street when his headlights catch something crouching on a stone wall. A 3 to 4 foot tall, hairless humanoid with an enormous oval head, huge, bulging orange eyes, and long fingers that looked like claws. He sketched it immediately after getting home. About an hour later, a completely separate group of witnesses reported the exact same creature in a nearby area. The next night, April 22nd, a third group saw it again. These witnesses didn't know each other. They reported independently. And when cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman collected their sketches, the drawings were disturbingly consistent. Same oversized head, same spindly limbs, same alien proportions, and then nothing. After April 22nd, 1977, the Dover Demon was never seen again. Not once. Keep in mind, Dover is less than 20 miles from Boston. This isn't some remote wilderness. Millions of people live in that region. But whatever those witnesses saw vanished after exactly exactly 48 hours. No photographs exist, no physical evidence, no bones, no tracks, no hair samples. The entire case rests on sketch consistency and the fact that nobody has ever identified a clear motive for unconnected teenagers to coordinate an elaborate hoax and then never take credit for it. Either this was the most disciplined prank in cryptid history, or something genuinely unexplainable passed through Dover for 2 nights and left. Nobody has a clean answer, and that's what makes it linger. But if a 48-hour mystery bugs you, wait until you hear about a creature that stuck around long enough to physically attack cars in a South Carolina swamp. Lizard man of scape or swamp. Most humanoid cryptids leave you with nothing but stories. The lizard man of scape or swamp left scratches on cars. June 29, 1988, Lee County, South Carolina. 17-year-old Christopher Davis is changing a tire near Scape or Swamp when a 7-foot bipedal reptilian creature charges his car. Scaly gray-green skin, glowing red eyes, 3-toed claws. The thing grabbed his roof and held on as he sped away. Within weeks, over 30 incidents flooded Lee and Sumter counties. By 1990, investigators had documented over 100 accounts total, and reports still trickle in today with 50+ on the books. But here's what makes this one genuinely different from every other cryptid on this list. There's property damage. Multiple vehicles and structures in the area showed deep scratches and structural damage attributed to the creature, actual physical material that investigators could examine. That's unprecedented. No other major humanoid cryptid has generated anything close to tangible evidence you can photograph and measure. Here's the thing though, that cuts both ways. Scratched up cars are exactly what a motivated hoaxer would stage after hearing about a monster sighting, and skeptics raise a fair point. The damage patterns look more consistent with a large bear or alligator than an intelligent bipedal reptile. South Carolina swamps are crawling with both, literally. So the lizard man sits in this frustrating middle ground, more evidence than any other cryptid, but not nearly enough to prove anything. But if you think a scratched up car is strange evidence, wait until you see actual video footage of something that shouldn't exist. Fresno night crawler. Most cryptids start with a campfire story. This one started with a security camera. In 2007, a home surveillance system in Fresno, California captured something nobody could explain. A small, 3 to 4 foot tall bipedal figure with a tiny featureless head and no visible arms, just a pair of long white legs striding calmly across a residential yard like a pair of living pants. The footage was first presented to Univision that November and later premiered at a UFO conference in 2008, and it went viral once it hit the internet. Nobody even had a name for it at first. The internet did what the internet does. It named it the Fresno Nightcrawler. Sighting reports followed across the Central Valley. Then a second piece of footage surfaced in 2011, this time from Yosemite National Park, with an entirely new camera source. And here's what makes this one genuinely different from everything else on this list. The Nightcrawler is the first humanoid cryptid born entirely through internet infrastructure. No print journalists broke the story, no field investigators trekked into the wilderness, no mountaineers snapped a blurry photograph on a frozen ridge, just home security cameras and online uploads. That's also its biggest problem. CGI was accessible in 2007. It was trivially easy by 2011. None of the footage has ever been definitively authenticated, and the Nightcrawler carries the lowest evidence confidence of any cryptid we've covered today. But here's the thing, zoom out. Every single creature on this list started somewhere that seemed ridiculous at the time. An oral tradition dismissed as superstition, a newspaper report mocked by scientists, a roughly 60-second film reel that people are still arguing about almost 60 years later. Every one of them was laughed at. Every one of them persisted anyway. The Nightcrawler is just doing what cryptids have always done. It's embedding itself in the stories people tell each other. It's just doing it faster and in a format the current generation actually uses. Whether that makes it more or less credible than a centuries-old Algonquian warning about starvation monsters is a question worth sitting with. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.